So we've got a lot to talk about here, and joining me to help understand all of this is the former CIA Director John Brennan. He's also an MSNBC senior national security and intelligence analyst and the author of Undaunted: My Fight Against America's Enemies at Home and Abroad. Director Brennan, good to see you this morning. Thank you for joining us. Got a lot of things we need to cover. Let's start with Brittney Griner and the criticism that has started to spread in the United States about why not Paul Whelan. The former president posted on his social media that it would have been easy to get Paul Whelan out. It was just a matter of asking. You've actually been involved in these kinds of things before. It's never actually a matter of just asking.
No, it is not, Ali. And it's very clear that Brittney Griner's celebrity, as well as the national focus on her case, made her, in Russia's eyes, a very valuable negotiating chip, which is why they held out for an exchange with somebody like Viktor Bout. Now, they consider Paul Whelan, who they have charged with espionage, being in a separate category. And the Russians traditionally have always insisted that individuals involved in or alleged to be involved in intelligence activities should be exchanged for others who are similarly charged, for example, in the United States. And so, therefore, they were unwilling to have Paul Whelan be part of this deal. And as I think the Biden administration said, it was a one-for-one, and it was only related to Brittney Griner.
One of the things that is becoming sort of obvious to us now is that most people who we used to think of as hostages are now wrongfully detained people. They're taken by either governments or government-affiliated bodies, and that complicates the negotiations for their release because now governments are negotiating with other governments, and Russia will want either a convicted terrorist like they got, or they're going to want possibly concessions, including concessions having to do with what's going on in Ukraine. How do we manage and talk about detainees when they're held by governments as opposed to by random groups of bandits?
Well, I think for many, many years, some governments, authoritarian governments, where the security services and the judiciaries are pawns of the political leadership, see U.S. citizens as well as foreign citizens as potential targets for either arrest, capture, as a way to either punish the United States as well as to use as bargaining chips. And so that's why I think the State Department rightly advises U.S. citizens to be very wary of traveling to certain countries overseas because of the potential vulnerability of these individuals. There are some countries that I wouldn't travel to because I could, in fact, be put in a similar situation. So I do think this is something the United States has had to deal with over the years, as well as other Western democracies. And it's something I think is going to continue to be a feature of the global landscape as long as these authoritarian systems are going to try to use that type of leverage against us.
I am reminded when they talk about Paul Whelan as a spy, Iran does the same kind of thing. They arrest sometimes journalists and business people with the allegation that they're spies. Iran and Russia have formed this remarkable partnership. I have to wonder, sir, whether this is an unforeseen consequence of us bailing out of that Iran nuclear deal where we at least had some influence with the Iranian government. Ever since leaving that deal, the Iranians have become more hardline. They've elected a more hardline government, and they've got this crackdown going on across the country, and they're working with Russia, and we don't have much leverage there.
I agree with you completely. When the Trump administration tore up the Iranian nuclear deal, I think, first of all, it strengthened the hardliners inside of Iran, which led to the election of President Raisi, but also it removed any type of influence or leverage that we might have. And so I think Iran's move toward Russia is clearly a result of the decision by the Trump administration to pull out of that deal, which, we were in violation of the deal. And so therefore, I think, again, what we see happening in Iran and Iran's relations with Russia and other countries is a result, a consequence of what I thought was a very, very foolish decision by the Trump administration.
Let me ask you about Ukraine, because you follow this very, very closely. I do wonder about these attacks as winter sets in Ukraine on civilian infrastructure. The Russians make the argument that energy infrastructure, electricity plants and fuel depots are military or assist the Ukrainians' military effort. But what they do is they leave a whole lot of Ukrainians in the cold in winter without power, in some cases without water, which require electrical pumping stations. How do you evaluate that? Because if that's true, that feels like a war crime.
Yes, and those Russian arguments are belied by the fact that the Russians also target with missiles civilian population centers. They have killed numerous Ukrainian citizens by their wanton destruction of the Ukrainian landscape. And so therefore going after the critical infrastructure, power grids, water pumping stations, other types of things are designed to weaken the resolve of the Ukrainian people. But I think, if anything, it is strengthening the resolve because it just demonstrates just how evil and ruthless Putin has been in prosecuting this very unjust war.
It strengthens global resolve to help Ukraine in this effort. Sir, thank you for joining us this morning. It's always a pleasure to see you. John Brennan is the former CIA director. He's NBC News' senior national security and intelligence analyst. He's the author of Undaunted, My Fight Against America's Enemies at Home and Abroad.